Yesterday I sailed 36 miles from Ballysoe, which is at the north end of the Grenadines, all the way down to Mayro, which is at the south end. This was all part of my plan to do a same-day clear out at Union Island and then clear in at Carriacou, which is part of Grenada and the last island that I was going to in the Eastern Caribbean chain. The sail was really amazingly beautiful. I started out after I did my laundry and explored Ballysoe Island, which I talked a little bit about last week, and then set off, put on some audiobooks, and just kicked back and enjoyed a really flat sea and some really nice wind. I wasn't necessarily expecting to make it the full 36 miles before sunset because I set out after noon, and I'm so used to going close-hauled with my boat and sort of pounding into weather that I'm always surprised when I go over 4.5 knots, and it's pleasant. I like underestimating the speed of my boat because then I can do surprising things, like make it all the way to Mayro. Mayro is a little bit past Union Island, and as I sailed by, I remembered some of the really good times I had there with some friends. On the east side of Union Island is a bay called Chatham Bay, and it's probably one of my favorite anchorages in the Grenadines. It's really big, so there's a ton of room to anchor, lots of options, and there's nothing on the beach at all at first glance. It just looks like a really wide, flat, sandy beach with a bunch of trees behind it and no buildings in sight. But then if you look a little closer, you'll see these tiny, tiny little, I don't want to say hut because it's not a hut, but it's like a very small little, maybe 5 by 10 sort of beach bar house sort of thing. And there are a couple of these scattered around, and then you'll start seeing little boats pulled up on the beach, and if you wake up early in the morning, you'll see the fishermen out dragging their nets. And it was at Chatham Bay that my friends and I went ashore and ended up having a beautiful night at one of the beach bars. The guys who owned it befriended us, and one of them made us goat knuckle soup, which I guess is a local delicacy. We were all sitting on the beach, and he was walking around gathering firewood, and he ended up building this huge fire and then hung a pot over it and made the soup in the pot over the fire with his little headlamp because it got dark before it was done. And we were meanwhile sitting around drinking beers and listening to the guy who owns the bar. His roster name is Pleasure. He's an amazing singer, and he writes his own songs about fishing in Chatham Bay, and then of course sings all the classics, and naturally, since it's the Caribbean, we sung a bunch of Bob Marley. I got into Mayro right at sunset. It was such perfect timing. Right as the light was leaving the sky, I was dropping my anchor, and all the sails were put away just as the first stars started to come out. It was a really peaceful night. Mayro's a small island, and I haven't really had much of a chance to explore. And I wasn't going to get a chance to explore it that day because I woke up before it got light to set off for Union Island. Union is the furthest south in the Grenadines where you can clear out, and the harbor there is sort of my nemesis because it's surrounded by coral on all sides, full of mooring balls, and really deep in the center, so there's hardly any room to anchor. So the prevailing wind is always from the east in Union. I would always assume that on a mooring they would give you 360 degrees of swing room, so I thought, okay, if I go ahead of this mooring on one side and drop my anchor, then I'll kind of fall back next. And so I went ahead of the mooring, but my main was still up, which I often set anchor under sail. But in this case, I hadn't reduced speed as much as I thought, so after I dropped anchor, I was still moving forward. Something felt funny, so I ran back to look at the depth sounder, and I realized that I had like 4 inches of water under my keel. So I threw the engine in reverse and winged back. I don't think I ever touched, I might have kissed the bottom with my keel. I never felt myself running aground, but I saw the water got really shallow. So then I had to re-anchor in slightly deeper water, but I was like, you know what, it doesn't even matter. That was enough of an experience for me. I cleared out of Union and then got back on my boat up to the anchor for the 3rd time that day by hand, which is a task. Upped all the sails. By that point it was blowing pretty nicely, which was awesome. And I shot out and headed towards Carriacou, where I was going to try to clear in before the end of the day. I managed to get into shore. Clearin', everything was super lovely, and that night I enjoyed a beautiful sunset. I got really excited about the bay I was in, which was Tyrrell Bay, which you have to go in. It's the biggest one, I think, and that's the one where you clear in. I think most of the places I've been in the Caribbean so far have been about half catamarans and half monohulls. I have nothing against catamarans, but as a monohull owner, I love to see other monohulls, and Tyrrell Bay was full of monohulls. There were hardly any cats, and all the boats were so cool. You could tell they were definitely live-aboard boats, and it was really fun to see all of these funky boats painted different colors with things tied all over the deck and people swarming around them. I found in the northern parts of the Caribbean there are a lot of boats. For some reason they're just there and there's no one on them, but every boat had people, and a lot of boats had rowboats and rowboats with sail rigs like mine, and there were little boats sailing around the bay all evening and kids everywhere. It was really exciting and fun. So as I sat and watched the sunset that night, I was sad that I was in my last country that I was going to be in the Eastern Caribbean, but also really excited about what I was going to see next. Happy Monday, and thanks for watching this week's video. If you like my videos and want to help support me, it helps me if you like and subscribe to my channel so that other people can be like, whoa, check out all of her subscribers, because that's how the internet works. If you also want to support me, I have a Patreon, patreon.com/windhippie, and thank you to all my patrons who are supporting me on there. You guys rock. And thank you if you plan on supporting me, and if you don't, that is so fine. I like you anyway. I also have an Instagram account at BoatLizard if you want to see more real-time updates on what I'm doing currently. Right now, I just finished sailing from Grenada to Bonaire in a really awesome passage that I'm super excited to tell you guys about. It's been a really long time since I've been at sea for more than 2 days, so I had a grand old time just sitting and doing little meditations on life in my cockpit. And one thing that I came to the conclusion of when I was underway, I was out for 5 days, so I had lots of time to think, was that I really miss writing. So I have a website with a blog that I was updating every week when I first started on this trip. My website is windhippie.com, and I have photos and writings, and doing these videos every week has kind of become an all-consuming task for me. And I made a resolution one of the nights as the sun was setting that I was going to write more, because I feel like, well, first, I love writing, and I feel like I'm doing all of these things, and they're all gonna leave my head at some point, and then no one's gonna remember, like, why was I even doing this stuff? So what I've decided to do, and I hope you guys aren't mad at me, is put out a new video every 2 weeks. It will be a longer, higher quality video, and on the other week that I'm not putting out a video, I'm gonna write a blog post on my website. So you guys are still going to get weekly updates if you like reading. If not, you can just look at the pictures. But it's not going to be every week on YouTube. If you are supporting me on Patreon, I have a slightly different deal for you guys. Since you guys signed up on there for weekly videos, I'm going to give you little snacks every other week. So the weeks that I'm not going to post a full video on YouTube, I'll post like a quick little 2 or 3 minute video on Patreon about something small that I'm doing that week or something cool that I saw. And so you guys are still gonna get weekly Patreon videos. And to make it easier for you guys, I'll also post my blog posts on Patreon for you so that everything's right there. This is not a plug to get you to join me on Patreon, YouTube world. If you want to see those little snacks, feel free to join, but I'm not trying to take away free stuff. I'm just trying to make the videos that I give you be nicer, higher quality, and give myself some space to do writing, which is something that I'm really passionate about and really enjoy and feel good about when I do it. So I will see you next on YouTube in 2 weeks, but next week I'll see you on my blog at windhippie.com, and the 2 weeks from now video you are going to get to see my 5-day passage from Grenada to Bonaire, the giant fish that I caught, beautiful sunsets, some crazy squally winds, and all sorts of other exciting things. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.